This is what I read in September. Alright, so today we're going to go over the books that I read in September. We're going to talk about them. I'm going to give you my ratings. I'm going to give you my thoughts. We'll go through them one by one, like we always do. We're going to go over the books that I read in September. So September was full of reading. I read a lot of fun books. I read a lot of books from my physical TBR. It felt good to get through the books that I own. So in October, I read 9 books, and books ranged from contemporary romance to fantasy to romantasy. So the first book that I read in September was The Paper Palace by Miranda Cowley Heller. This is a story about a character named Elle that goes to a cabin in Cape Cod, and her family has spent every summer there since she was little, and some of her closest friends she met at this cabin. This book is a Reese's book club pick, and this book covers the main character's history, her trauma, and her very complicated love life. The writing is very atmospheric and vivid, kind of cinematic. It really encapsulates summer and kind of how we feel during summer and that summer ambiance. I didn't expect how heavy this book would be. I thought it was going to be kind of like a lighthearted read, but there was a lot of trauma and a lot of hard decisions that had to be made in this book. So it was a really heavy read. I don't think the synopsis really prepares you for the weight of the book. This book has a lot of past and present flip-flopping, so that kept me really engaged. But I did kind of struggle with how the book was structured. The book is kind of divided into parts or books. I thought at some point there would be either point of view shifts or pivotal moments, but I don't really remember anything sticking out to me. The pacing felt slow but tense at the same time, and the ending was so very vague, and I found that truly frustrating. It wasn't a clean and clear ending. It was up to interpretation, and I think that the author has stated that she had a very clear ending for the book, but I did not pick up on that at all. I had to reread it a couple times to really come to a conclusion myself. Overall, this book is really human and raw, and there's a sense of nostalgia as well. This book wasn't really a standout for me, but I'm glad I read it. So overall, I gave this book a 3 out of 5 stars and a 2 out of 5 for spice. I would recommend it to anyone that wanted kind of a really raw, emotional summertime book. The next book I read was a Netgalley read, and it was called Accidentally Wedded to a Werewolf. This is book 1 of the Claw Haven series, and the published date was October 2024. This book was exactly what the title promised. It's a lighthearted, silly monster rom-com. It doesn't take itself too seriously. It's a perfect book for that time in between fall and winter, I think. And this is definitely a book when you're looking for something cozy and silly and a little spicy. This book puts a fun spin on human-monster cohabitation and definitely utilizes the forced proximity trope. Readers who enjoy Grumpy Sunshine Pear would really enjoy this book. So it's about our main character being stranded in a new place. She lives a really fast-paced city life, high rises and money. Being stuck in a smaller town is definitely kind of culture shock to her, and also they're monsters. She checks into this hotel and realizes that a family of werewolves run this hotel, and she meets MMC Oliver. There's lots of banter, and I would say the Alaskan setting really helped, build the world. Personally, it was a silly time, but not really for me. I struggled to connect with the female main character, and I found that the story was really repetitive at times. I feel like there wasn't maybe a ton of research done as far as the main character's career. Coming from someone who comes from that job field, I feel like there was some disconnect there. And I just wasn't really invested in the relationship. I don't think I really was pulled into the book until the very final stretch of the book. And I think it was that point when the characters were taking themselves and their relationship more seriously. It still was a fun seasonal monster romance. And I think that for that audience that is looking for that, that specific type of book, you would probably really like this one. I rated it a 2 out of 5 stars, but I rated it a 4 out of 5 spice because, whoa. After Accidentally Wedded to a Werewolf, I flipped back over to a contemporary romance, and I read my first Nicholas Sparks book. This book was kind of okay, average for me. I can see the hype around the author and why they made lots of movies out of this author's work. The opening was really hits you in your face and you're like, whoa, like I wasn't really prepared for that. I thought it was going to be more of a slow start, but the book opens up in a really interesting way. I was worried about what kind of ride I was in for. Also, please don't come for me. This is just my personal opinion, and it's just the opinion about this book, and it doesn't say anything about anything else, but I was really kind of bored with like the marine background of our main male character. While I understand it was a really important part of his story and who he is as a character, some of those sections really dragged for me, and I think that maybe we could have done out with the length of them. I mean, some of them felt necessary, but not all of them. I did find myself kind of skimming those parts of the story. Around the halfway mark, though, I started to get more invested in the story. The characters were really engaging, even in like some characters I really liked and some characters I really hated. Even with characters that you hate, you feel something and you can still enjoy the story. The writing was solid. Obviously, Nicholas Sparks has created so many books, and there's a reason why he is such a well-known author. It was really an atmospheric book as well. The story was a bit predictable, but it did keep me reading. I was pretty interested. Though the ending was really abrupt and it kind of caught me off guard. I was really kind of surprised when the epilogue appeared. Sparks was really good at creating anticipation and not giving you all of the details or the information until the very, very end, like the last page. It did like leave a lot of room for like panic and like, what the actual frick is going on? Overall, it wasn't my favorite book, but I always love to read new authors to me, and so I'm glad that I read a Nicholas Sparks book. I probably will read another one just to kind of see if there are any themes or if writing continues to grasp me. I did also watch the movie immediately after finishing this book. Would not recommend. Obviously, the movie took out a lot of important parts, and there was more disconnect in the movie than I felt there was in the book. So overall, I rated it 3 out of 5 stars, and I would say either one or 2 out of 5 spice. I would probably lean more to one spice out of 5 spice. But yeah, overall, pretty good time. It was a book, and I read it, and I'm not mad that I read it. Okay, so after we endured the contemporary romance, we went back to what I know and love. That was a mix of fantasy and kind of historical fiction, and that was Divine Rivals by Rebecca Ross. This book pulled me in immediately, and I stayed invested all the way through. The pacing was perfect. It wasn't rushed, but it wasn't too slow. It was a perfect balance. The characters, there was some depth in the characters, and I really liked that. They had layers. These characters had layers, and I liked that too. And it really made like their choices and emotions feel really believable. The main male character stood out to me. Of course, we love me a good MMC. I couldn't get enough of him. The story itself was new and fresh to me. I hadn't read anything with this storyline before. It wasn't your typical fantasy book. I would put this more along the lines of, what's that one book I read that I really liked? I would put this more along the lines of like The Book of Lost Hours by Haley Gelfuso. This is book 1 of the Letters of Enchantment series. At some point I did pair the physical book with the audiobook, and it made for a really fantastic reading experience. I would highly recommend. The narration really brought like the poetic writing to life. It was very like lyrical writing, poetic writing, and it was very immersive. Overall, this was a really strong first book, and I'm excited to continue the series. It gave me everything I wanted in terms of characters, world building, and writing, while leaving me very eager for what is next. Unfortunately, I don't have the second book yet, so I have to wait a little, but I will be really excited to start the next one. So overall, I give this a 4.5 out of 5 stars and a 1 out of 5 spice. Truly a romantic story. So after fantasy, we jump back to romance, and I finally read Made for Each Other by Lynn Painter. This was my first time picking up one of her adult books, and overall it was fun. Definitely did not hold a candle to Better Than the Movies or Nothing Like the Movies, and it was a fun, quick read. I switched between the physical copy and the audiobook, which it kept me moving through the story at a good pace. This one leans into the fake dating trope, and it's closed door romance with minimal spice. The MMC was really adorable, and I really enjoyed his role in their dynamic. That being said, despite the title, there wasn't really a whole lot of maid content going on, which I feel like it was a missed opportunity for the story. Could have created more fun or chaos. The story itself had miscommunication elements, but nothing overly frustrating. And although their plan never technically fell through, it didn't feel like as high stakes as it could have been. It was light and entertaining, and I had a good time, and it was really easy to fly through. While I really enjoyed Lynn Painter's writing in Better Than the Movies, this one didn't really hit the mark for me. And that's why I rated it 3 out of 5 stars. If you're in the mood for something playful and kind of chaotic, this could be a good read for you. I also rated it 2 out of 5 for spice. Okay, so we moved on to fantasy after Made for Each Other, and I picked up A Fate Inked in Blood. I've had this book for a while now, and I finally had the chance to read it, and I'm glad that I did. The book hooked me right away. The first 2 chapters were really different and unique. The beginning kept its momentum really well. And the writing style had a touch of humor that kept my attention. I think it worked well for the tone. The MMC was loyal and protective, and there were even side characters that kind of left a good impression. Although, some of them did feel a little underdeveloped. As if they were meant to be important, and maybe they just weren't important at the moment, because there is a book 2 for this series. So, maybe they come back later in a different way, but they didn't feel like they were supposed to leave a really big impact, I feel, but they didn't. And the FMC was very strong female character. And the cast, the whole cast of the book was just really enjoyable. The plot felt like it made sense to me, and it unfolded in a way that was really unique and purposeful. The journey that they went on worked, the setting was strong, and the twists were twisting. It didn't really, emotionally, it didn't hit me hard at all, but it did make me laugh. There was humor throughout the book, and I enjoy some humor in my books. This isn't your typical fae and werewolf fantasy book. It is heavy on the Norse mythology, and I think that made it really unique, and it gave it a really fresh feeling. I think people of Aktar or Throne of Glass would really enjoy this book, but the story does really stand out on its own. Overall, I had a good time with this book. I'm glad that I read it, and I would definitely be continuing the series. I gave it 3 out of 5 stars and 3 out of 5 spice. Okay, so at that point, those were the only books that I had picked for September with the TBR jar. I think I had only picked 6 books, and I read the 6 books that I said I would read, and I had about a week left in September to read whatever I wanted. So around this time, Ali Hazelwood had just released Hot for Slayer with the group of other authors through Kickstarter, and it was actually available on Amazon Prime for free to read. So I scooped that up as I would any other Ali Hazelwood story, and I quite literally had the best time that I have had in a long time with a book. So obviously I read it on my Kindle, and let me just give you the synopsis here. So this book was way too much fun. Okay, so it was about a vampire that has lived for a very long time, and she's never really experienced love because she's a vampire and she lives a long time. People come and go, and they're really just humans are blips in her life. Also, finding another vampire to settle down with is pretty tricky for her. There's this man, this vampire hunter that has been trying to kill her forever. They have ran into each other multiple times across this vampire's lifetime, and he's really the only constant in her life. There's a really funny twist in the story where the hunter ends up not knowing who he is or where he's from or what he's supposed to be doing, and so that opens up an opportunity for the vampire and the slayer to get to know each other. I think that moment in the story where they come together and they finally start to get to know each other is truly amazing. Something that this book had, and that it carried on from beginning to end, was the classic Ali Hazelwood humor. I love feeling obviously we're not only the character and we're reading about this character's story, but I love hearing the thoughts and the things that the character doesn't say. That's one of my favorite parts of a story, and Allie writes it really well, like that internal dialogue, just truly amazing, just so well. The book is about like just him and her and how them getting to know each other, but also like eventually like when is his memory going to return. This was a great book to read for the Halloween spooky season. I'm glad that I read it when I did, but you could read it in October and still have a really fantastic time. I was absolutely obsessed with this book. It was a very fast-paced, clever story. I quite literally read it in one day. I will say that it's not a very long story, so it was easy to consume in one day, but I couldn't put this book down. I had to just keep reading. There was seamless transitions between the past and present. And although the female main character was a vampire, she was so relatable. There weren't a ton of side characters. There was one that plays a kind of a big part of the story, and he had a really funny nickname. The atmosphere was really vivid and immersive. For a short novella, the world felt very well developed, and it was really easy to picture all these places that I've never been to before, and I thought that really says something for an author, right? We also explored being true to yourself as a person, bending yourself in a way to fit into a certain shape or category that people feel like you need to be. And there was spice, but it hit at the exact right time, and it did not overshadow the story at all. There was one thing that I didn't like about the story, and it was the length. I just wish that it would have been longer. I could have read an entire series about these characters. And I would just recommend this to anyone that loves rom-coms or loves Allie. If you like her writing, you have to pick this one up. You literally have to. I expect you to drop what you're doing and read this book right now. So with all that to say, I did rate this book a 5 out of 5 stars and 3 out of 5 for spice. And it has a 4-star overall rating on Goodreads with 32,000 plus ratings. So that's saying something. After consuming that book in one day, I needed to read something else for September. I picked up another arc. This one was called Forged in Flame and Shadows by Zara Storm. It was a Netgalley read, so I did read that one on my Kindle as well. This is book 2 of the Fated to the Sun and Stars series. So this book is kind of like a fun continuation to book 1. It dives deeper into the female main character's kind of story and lore and her magic and kind of the relationship that she has with the main male character. The pacing was steady overall, though I feel like the ending felt a little rushed. Although I was really engaged with the story, sometimes I felt overwhelmed by the names of the places and the characters that were involved in this story. So I feel like I would have liked more conflict in the story, especially we learned something in the book about the main male character, and I feel like there was a missed opportunity there with kind of that scene and those characters. The conflict just felt one and done. Like it just happened and then it fizzled out and like nobody cared about it ever again. There were some emotional moments, but nothing too crazy, nothing too memorable. The book had a nice mix of surprises and suspense. And I appreciated the themes of independence, choice, and like acceptance. The book was easy to read. I feel like I would have liked to spend more time in each setting to really get to know like the world. Overall, this was a solid book, and I would continue to recommend this series to fantasy readers and romantasy readers that enjoy like a strong fae male character and about like heroines finding themselves. I'll definitely continue this series when the 3rd book comes out. Actually, I think the 3rd book already came out. This author is just like shooting out stories like crazy. So I'll definitely be picking that up as well. Overall, I gave this book a 3 out of 5 stars and 4 out of 5 for spice. So it's a pretty spicy book. Last but not least, let me just stress that I picked up book 2 of the Red Queen series called Glass Sword. This book, you guys, look, mark this book up quite a bit. So this is book 2. The first book was called Red Queen, and I enjoyed the characters in book 1, and I even enjoyed them more in book 2. We really got to know the characters better in book 2. It was emotional, it was action-packed, and there were cliffhangers throughout the book and so many intense moments that it was nearly impossible to put the book down. The pacing was great. Even though there were a ton of characters in this book, I had no trouble following along. It all really just clicked in a way that made the story really easy to consume, and it made it really easy to follow along long. There were so many characters in this book that I was connected to, that I really enjoyed. That makes it really difficult for the end of books, typically, when you're super connected to characters. Each one of the characters brought something really unique to the story. Some were unlikable, but again, like, a good story is going to have unlikable characters, and you can feel connected and you can hate them. And I want to hate characters as well as liking them. The unlikable characters really gave the story its edge. So many scenes stuck with me. The end, especially, oh my gosh, I uploaded a TikTok of reading the last 20% of this book, and holy cow, the ending was intense. There were just scenes that literally made me cry. And it was a heavy ending. I didn't want to put this book down. I devoured this book. I read it in like 3 days. I think what was really interesting about this book was how power and revenge can really overtake someone, and you start to lose yourself and you lose sight of that when those things are introduced. Victoria's writing is really incredible. It's very consistent to the first book that I read in the series. It's very clear and concise, and it was really thorough as well. The world building was well thought out. It pulled me in. This is going to be a controversial opinion. I actually DNF'd the Powerless series, and I wanted to pick this one up because a lot of people were relating that story to this one. I would say I cannot stop reading these books. So if you didn't like Powerless, I would recommend this one. If you do like Powerless, I would also recommend this one. If you like high stakes and like unforgettable characters, this series is for you. I truly cannot wait to pick up King's Cage, which is book 3 of the series. So with that, those were the 9 books that I read in September. Overall, I had an amazing reading month. There were a lot of 4 stars, and there was even a 5-star. That is just so exciting for a reader, I think. I read some arcs, which are always fun to me because I want to find books that aren't popular yet that might be really amazing and stand out. Finding the series by Zara Storm has been really enjoyable for me. I also am so glad that I read A Fate Inked in Blood, and I'm so glad that I read like a really fresh and interesting fantasy story. Also, Divine Rivals came out of nowhere. Didn't expect that one to be so good. And we read a few authors that I have not read before, and that is also really fun to me, is finding new authors that have fresh writing styles and maybe could be potentially a favorite author of mine in the future. Let me know what you read in September down in the comments, and if you had any 4 or 5-star reads. I would love to hear what you guys are reading. As usual, if you enjoyed this video, please like, subscribe, and turn on the notifications. That's really truly helpful for any creator that you're following. But I would really appreciate it if you and I became friends. And with that, I will see you guys in the next one. Have a fun and spooky October. Bye!